Welcome back to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we are heading into the scorching heat of the Theban Necropolis to solve a mystery that has frustrated archaeologists for over a century. For decades, the map of ancient Egypt's golden age, the glorious 18th dynasty, seemed nearly complete. We had the tombs of the great warriors and the famous queens. We knew where they were buried, and we had cataloged their journeys to the afterlife. But there was a ghost in the machine. A missing link. Thutmose II, the fourth pharaoh of this illustrious lineage, was a phantom. We had his mummy, a battered refugee found in a cache in the 19th century. But his tomb, his eternal house, was nowhere to be found. For over 100 years, the question remained, where was the falcon in the nest buried? The answer, as it turns out, was not in the famous Valley of the Kings, but hidden in a rugged, forgotten cleft of the western Wadi, beneath the path of an ancient waterfall. The discovery of tomb Wadi C-4 is a detective story 3 millennia in the making. It is a tale of a king overshadowed by his ambitious wife, a tomb ravaged by flash floods, and a modern archaeological triumph that rewrites the history of the new kingdom. So settle in as we walk through the search, the discovery, and the secrets of the Thutmose cache. To understand the magnitude of this find, we first have to understand the man himself, or rather, the enigma that was Thutmose II. In the history books, he has often been treated as a placeholder. He was stuck between giants. He was the son of the great warrior Thutmose I, and the father of the man who would become known as the Napoleon of Egypt, Thutmose III. But most famously, he was the husband and half-brother of Hatshepsut, the woman who would shatter tradition and declare herself king. Thutmose II ascended the throne around 1493 BCE. Inscriptions describe him as a hawk in the nest. His reign was short, likely somewhere between 3 and 13 years. Traditional narratives have been unkind to him, painting him as frail, passive, and completely dominated by his powerful wife. But the archaeological record hints at a more complex reality. This wasn't just a puppet. He led campaigns into Nubia to crush rebellions. He dispatched expeditions to the Sinai. His name appears on monuments at Karnak. He was a divine ruler of a burgeoning empire. Yet, upon his death, he seemed to vanish from the landscape. While the tombs of his father and his son were located in the prestigious Valley of the Kings, Thutmose II's tomb was missing. Early excavators like Howard Carter and Victor Loret scoured the cliffs, finding the resting places of nearly every other major player of the 18th dynasty. The absence of Thutmose II became a glaring hole in the map of the Theban Necropolis. The mystery deepened in 1881. That year, the world was stunned by the discovery of the royal cache at Deir el-Bahari, known as DB 320. In this hidden cliffside tomb, priests of the 21st dynasty had stashed dozens of royal mummies to protect them from tomb robbers. Among the illustrious dead, like Ramses the Great and Seti I, lay a mummy labeled as Thutmose II. But the body raised more questions than answers. It was badly damaged. Ancient robbers had broken his left arm and hacked at his body in search of amulets. But the forensics were even more puzzling. The mummy appeared to be that of a man in his 30s, plagued by a nasty skin disease, possibly smallpox or a parasitic infection. This physical evidence clashed with the historical theory of a frail youth who died young. Was this truly Thutmose II? And if so, where had he been moved from? The Thutmose cache thus became a dual mystery: the identity of the body in the box, and the location of the tomb from which it was torn. For much of the 20th century, archaeologists thought they might have already found his tomb without realizing it. There was a tomb called KV-42 in the Valley of the Kings that was a prime suspect. It was unfinished, and it had a cartouche-shaped burial chamber typical of that era. It even contained an unfinished quartzite sarcophagus. It looked like the right time period and the right style. However, the smoking gun was missing. When Howard Carter found foundation deposits there in 1921, they didn't bear the name of Thutmose II. They bore the name of Meritre Hatshepsut, the wife of Thutmose III. The walls were unadorned, and the chamber seemed unused by its intended owner. Eventually, the academic consensus shifted. KV-42 was not the king's tomb. The search was back to square one. That brings us to the early 21st century. Attention began to shift away from the crowded, tourist-heavy Valley of the Kings to the western Wadis. This is a rugged, desolate area of the Theban mountain range known in Arabic as Gabanat el-Qurud, or the Cemetery of the Monkeys. Historically, this area was associated with the queens and minor royals of the 18th dynasty. It is a harsh landscape of soaring cliffs and deep ravines, prone to violent flash floods during rare desert storms. It was here, miles from the crowds, that the New Kingdom Research Foundation, a mission affiliated with the University of Cambridge and led by the tenacious archaeologist Dr. Piers Litherland, began a systematic survey. The team was looking for the missing pieces of the Thutmoside family puzzle. They knew that Thutmose III had buried his foreign wives in this area. The logic was sound. If the main valley was full or politically complicated, perhaps the earlier Thutmosides had utilized these remote cliffs. In October 2022, the team focused on a site beneath a sheer cliff face, directly under the path of an ancient dried-up waterfall. To the untrained eye, it seemed like an unlikely place for a tomb. It was essentially a geological funnel for water and debris. Yet, as they cleared the mountains of rubble, something incredible happened. The outline of a rock-cut staircase emerged. For 3 seasons, the team excavated. The work was brutal. They were essentially digging out a drain that had been clogged with thousands of years of flood deposits, layers of concrete-hard mud, and limestone chips. Initially, expectations were modest. Dr. Litherland later admitted that they thought it was the tomb of a royal wife or a princess. The location, adjacent to other queens' tombs, suggested a consort. But as they descended deeper, the architecture began to speak a different language. The staircase was too grand, the corridor was too wide. And then, they reached the burial chamber. The breakthrough came when the team breached the main chamber. Though the room was filled with debris, a glimpse of the ceiling froze the archaeologists in their tracks. Peeking through the dust was a patch of blue paint, adorned with yellow stars. In the iconography of the New Kingdom, this celestial ceiling was a prerogative of kings. It represented the night sky, the realm of the goddess Nut, into which the pharaoh would be reborn. Commoners and minor royals did not sleep under the stars of the netherworld. Only a pharaoh did. At that moment, the team knew. This wasn't a queen, this was a king. The tomb, designated Wadi C-4, had been thoroughly looted in antiquity. The sarcophagus was gone, the golden masks melted down, and the furniture stolen. However, the looters and the floods had left behind fragments of history. Sifting through the flood deposits, the team found the smoking gun that every archaeologist dreams of. Shards of alabaster canopic jars and vessels. Cleaning the fragments revealed hieroglyphic inscriptions. The mesmerizing shapes of the ibis and the sun disk appeared. The name Thutmose, or Thutmose. And, alongside it, the cartouche of his great royal wife, Hatshepsut. The inscriptions referred to Thutmose II as the good god and the lord of the 2 lands. There was no doubt remaining. This was the original, long-lost tomb of Thutmose II. Tomb C-4 is a marvel of early 18th dynasty engineering, serving as a missing link in the evolution of royal tombs. Unlike the bent axis tombs of the early dynasty, like his father's, C-4 shows a transition towards straighter axes, though it retains the intimate, hidden nature of the era. But the most striking feature is its location. The tomb was cut directly into the bedrock at the base of a natural water runoff. This was a fatal flaw. The architects likely chose it for its dramatic, secluded beauty, or perhaps its alignment with sacred geography. However, it doomed the tomb to destruction. Though much of the plaster has fallen away, traces of the Amduat, or the Book of the Hidden Chamber, were found on the walls. The Amduat maps the 12 hours of the night, guiding the sun god and the deceased king through the perils of the underworld to dawn. The presence of the Amduat is the final seal of royal ownership. The excavation also revealed why Thutmose II was lost to history for so long. Stratigraphic analysis of the mud inside the tomb suggests a catastrophe occurred shortly after the king's burial, perhaps as little as 6 years later. A massive storm hit the Theban mountain. Water cascaded down the waterfall, smashing into the tomb entrance. The floodwaters carrying tons of rocks and mud burst into the corridors, smashing the funerary equipment and burying the king's sarcophagus in sludge. This event likely triggered the first cash operation. The priests, or the officials of the reigning pharaoh, likely Hatshepsut, or young Thutmose III, would have had to mount a rescue mission. They entered the muddy, ruined tomb, retrieved the mummy of their father and husband, and salvaged what little grave goods survived. This explains why the mummy ended up in the DB 320 cache centuries later. He was a refugee twice over, first evicted by nature, then by men protecting him from robbers. One of the most compelling aspects of this discovery is the light it sheds on the relationship between Thutmose II and Hatshepsut. Popular history often casts Hatshepsut as the wicked stepmother, or the ambitious usurper who shoved her weak husband aside. The artifacts in Wadi C-4 tell a different story. The alabaster vessels were high quality, expensive, and inscribed with her name alongside his. The tomb, while not as massive as later Ramesside tombs, was a fitting house of eternity, decorated with the sacred texts required for his resurrection. Hatshepsut did not bury him in a pauper's grave. She buried him as a king. The discovery suggests a partnership, a respectful transition of power, where she honored his memory before eventually ascending the throne herself. Furthermore, the location of C-4 in the Western Wadis forces a rethink of the sacred geography of Thebes. We now know that the Western Wadis were not just for queens. For a brief period in the mid-18th dynasty, this rugged canyon was a royal necropolis in its own right, a secondary valley of the kings that was abandoned, likely due to the flooding issues that destroyed Thutmose II's tomb. This explains why Thutmose III moved back to the main valley. He learned from the hydrological disaster that befell his father. The discovery of Wadi C-4 is being hailed by the Supreme Council of Antiquities as the most significant find since Tutankhamun. But unlike Tut's tomb, which dazzled with gold, Thutmose II's tomb dazzles with information. It solves the topographical puzzle of the 18th dynasty. It provides a context for the mummy in the museum. It offers a timeline of the natural history of the region, giving us clues about ancient climate change and flash floods. As the excavation continues, the team hopes to find more, perhaps Shabti figures, fragments of the sarcophagus, or jewelry dropped by the rescue party in the mud. Every sifted bucket of dust brings us closer to the man behind the mummy. For 500 years, Thutmose II was a king without a castle, a ruler whose legacy was washed away by the rains and overshadowed by the brilliance of his family. The Thutmose cache was a misnomer. He wasn't hiding, he was simply waiting. The discovery of Tomb C4 restores his dignity. It places him back on the map of Egyptian history, not as a footnote, but as a pharaoh who commanded the stars on his ceiling and the devotion of his queen. The falcon in the nest has finally been found, and the golden age of Egypt shines a little brighter for it. Thanks for listening to G Fun Facts Online.